I'm Neil, and I'm a lecturer in anatomy in HARC, or the Human Anatomy Resource Centre. And I was invited to give this talk this morning following having won the Sir Alistair Pilkington Award earlier this year for my work in the redevelopment of teaching approaches in a human anatomy dissection module. It's a particular practical module that I lead on the second year of an anatomy and human biology degree programme that we have at Liverpool. So the background to this is that we have that really popular, highly ranked and successful degree course. You can see the reference to the Guardian listings there. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but and so I am the leader of one of the flagship dissection modules, the one that we do in second year. And one of the things that really attracts students to the course is the fact that we have a comprehensive program of dissection. So they do cadaveric dissection all the way throughout, one module in each year. And so this is a really important module for that degree. And ordinarily, that involves getting 6 or 7 students to a single one of our body donors. As you can see in the picture here, we would have people kind of crowd around a single table, and they spend about 3 months working together in groups collaboratively to learn those 2 body regions, the abdomen and the pelvis, through a deep exploration of cadaveric tissue, dissection. They work together to kind of to dissect it in minute detail. For reasons that at this point need not be discussed. I'm sure that was a little bit tricky to do this last year. And so with the module in danger of not being able to run at all, certainly not in its normal format, once we'd lost our main teaching method, it kind of forced us back to the drawing board to rethink the whole module format. So without changing the syllabus, we changed literally everything else. And so with this drastic change, the first thing to kind of do was to make sure that we involved the students in the conversation, because although it had to happen, they were obviously understandably anxious about that, about the fact that it was going to be very different from what they thought they'd signed up for, and with it being the dissection module that they feel very strongly about. So spoke to them and identified the things that were most important to them that they were worried about missing out on, and made sure that we incorporated that into the redesign. Things that they particularly brought up were obviously the loss of dissection. They wanted to make sure that we compensated for that in a practical sense, but also the loss of shared experiences. They really like dissecting in groups together. And they were worried, as we all were, about how communication would work, being in a hybrid environment and a lot of the work being done from home. So to address this, I did quite a few things, but the 2 things to take away from kind of keeping the communication lines good were to institute a Monday update, which is something that I stole from my boss, which is where I gave the students an update every week. The form that I used was every Monday morning at 9 a.m. the students got a 2-minute video of me explaining everything that they would be expected to do that week and a timeline for when that they should do it. And they found that really helpful to try and manage their workload. And then a Friday drop-in, Friday morning, they would have an hour to come and on Zoom and ask any questions that they wanted. Slightly low attendance at first, but I kind of got around that by turning it into a Kahoot quiz, which then they could ask questions at the end, and people came along to that a bit more. The lecture component, which runs through the whole module, was redesigned into an asynchronous mini-series. So there's a picture here. So this is taken from one of the lectures. This is a slide. So you've got me explaining it on the side, and each one of these tabs at the top is a different 5 to 10 minute video, and where we go through the kind of the basic pure anatomy, the diagrams or cadaveric pictures and videos and stuff. And then each one will be split up with an active learning task, so problem solving, quizzes, building things, and so on. And that was really popular. It had to change all the assessment, but that was really good actually, because it was an opportunity to improve it, align it better to the curriculum 2021 principles, and also to try and address some of the concerns the students had. So with them being concerned about the loss of shared experiences, I instituted a group task. So we set up a dedicated team site for the module. Each group had their own channel, and they could work through and plan their group work, and they could tag me in to ask questions, look for support as well. And then the general channel became a site for really good group conversation as well throughout the module. So that worked very well. The group task actually was really successful. So they had to apply the knowledge and to create a group video. And we've got all sorts of really innovative and interesting ways that the students did it. So some of them would be carrying out activities themselves and describing which muscles are involved and so on, or people narrating surgical footage and looking at surgical and clinical applications of the anatomy. So that was really nice. But the elephant in the room is still the dissection, and the question was, how do you replace dissection in a dissection module and achieve the same learning outcomes? We were lucky that we were still able to get into Hark in the lab, actually, for face-to-face practicals for a period of time up until the student travel window at Christmas, as long as we had full PPE, as you can see there. So that was great because it allowed us to maintain the cadaveric experience. But because the lab time that was drastically reduced, we had to kind of come up with other alternatives. This is a layout down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the plan for one of the practicals. So we did this in small groups, so we had to repeat it several times, but students were working in pairs. So you take this one, for example, where we've got a little trolley either side of each table. The two students that are facing each other, but 2 meters apart, working on exactly the same task, and they've got a body donor each, and they have to work their way and problem solve. So they're looking at surface anatomy landmarks, trying to identify which organs would lie under which ribs and which bony landmarks can be used for surgical incisions and things like that. So they're kind of working through a set of tasks and problems, and then they move around the room together and they continue to work in pairs and collaborate, building things, problem solving, and focused it around the cadaver. So we would have professionally dissected specimens ready for them, so that they still got to see the end product. And that was really nice. That was very popular. But of course, there was a 3D, so there was an online version of the practical as well, because it was important to build in a contingency. A lot of students were isolating, but also some felt less comfortable in coming to the practicals. And of course, this meant that when we were forced to go online at Christmas, we already had a contingency built in, so it wasn't a big problem, which was great. And this involved 3D anatomy software, so you can see there's an example here of what that looks like, but there's also photogrammetry of cadaveric specimens as well. So it gave a really good replication of the practical experience for anybody who missed it, and that was good because we didn't lose so much learning. And the practical component was assessed by a spotter, which is great because that's what we usually do, and that's a really great assessment for that environment. It's a good way to assess practical knowledge, and that was still appropriate for what we did. But my favourite thing, and the most popular thing among the students that we did this year, was to institute something called the Anatomy Study Box. So this was a box, a big cardboard box that every student got in the first day of the module. And that contained all sorts of different study activities. So it was lecture handouts, a practical booklet for the brand new practicals that I'd written for this module. And also it contained everything that they needed to be able to construct and build their own series of anatomical models. So all low-tech stuff. But we gave them all the resources and the instructions to build a series of anatomical models where there would be one model each week, and it was based around the most difficult learning objective of that week. So with the loss of being able to actually get your hands on and dissect, and you lose that kind of physical interaction and the productive element of it, we kind of tried to replicate that through making these models at home. And that was great because it meant that students were getting more practical experience despite the lack of lab time. And they were the ones who lived together, built them together, or they did so over Zoom and things like that. This is the assembly line that we had going. That the technicians were terrific at putting all the boxes together. So I say each student got one of these. And it was really nice, actually, because on day one of the module, having been really anxious over the summer about what would happen, a lot of them said as soon as they saw that, they felt really reassured that they weren't going to get some patch job, and you know, that it was clear that the experience and what we were going to give them had been prioritized and thought about carefully. So that was quite nice. And this is some of the screenshots from the Teams channel where students have made the models and then shared them and used them to discuss the things that they found it helpful with, or also some of the things that they still didn't understand after the building the model. And that was really nice because, again, kind of with a lot of them being stuck in their bedrooms for the majority of the working week, it kind of helped to bring the experience back together of working together. I did some Zoom study sessions as well. These were great. So kind of turned them into games. So one of the study sessions that you can see some clips of here is we had students put into breakout rooms in groups, and they were given an organ or a body part each, and they had to go away and research and come back and make a poster using the Zoom whiteboard function, and then go back into the main room and present their poster, and they had to vote on which was the best one. And it's incredible how competitive they get over little lab coat pin badges, but they all did a really brilliant job as well, and they really seem to enjoy that, which is good. So I think the kind of takeaway from it for me was we didn't know how it was going to go, and it was, radical changes to change so much in 1 year, and especially abandoning dissection. But the students loved it. You can see the trend line in the student feedback is not far off being perfect for all of the scores. The things that the students particularly praised was the communication, and this is something that I know we've all had problems with this year. Trying to have good communication with people through blended learning is difficult. So anybody who's kind of still working on a hybrid or blended approach for next year, I really recommend the idea of having that Monday update. I think that was really useful. The students like that. It made them feel supported and connected. But also they really like the format of the lectures, and the ability to collaborate and still work together. And some of them thought that the module was even better than if it was dissection. Obviously, they don't have, we wouldn't know, but I think the reason they thought that is just because they could clearly see, that actually this has maybe been thought about and put together in a much more coherent way than the previous version of the module was, because we had to be so careful about how well it fitted together. So that was good. But the important thing is that when we was changing this and redesigning it with the people that helped me, was that I was adamant everything that we did, even the huge amount of work that went into it, all had to be reusable. So nothing was made to be only ever used once. And so it's all transferable to this coming year and future years as well. And with the curriculum review in life sciences coming up, I know that any modules that I am involved in will definitely kind of be taking cues from the things we've learned here. And certainly some of the medicine teaching as well will do the same. We've had loads of interest from wider anatomical community, with lots of people kind of doing similar things and getting in touch and asking for the designs. And it was presented to the UK Parliament actually by Dr. Faye Penrose from the vet school, who sits on a committee there as good practice in art and STEM education. So that was really nice. And we're hoping to make a contribution as well too. So I'm happy to release any of the designs if anybody is involved in teaching this kind of thing in other modules. We're happy to share the designs for them, but we're looking at publishing it as well. So the idea of having productive teaching and building things, it was built on good pedagogical principles. We knew it would work, but nobody had ever really used it as a regular tool before, as far as we can see. It only ever seems to be used as a single standalone thing to teach one topic. And what we found, which was quite surprising from, well, maybe not too surprising, is that the students loved the idea of using it regularly throughout the semester, and they felt it was like a really good thing for the experiential learning. So hopefully we'll be able to publish that later this year. But the biggest thing that I learned is how absolutely fantastic everybody that I work with is. And so I have to say huge thank you to everyone, because I mean, I bit off more than I could chew with redesigning this module, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without the people who dug me out. So Steph and Amy, who helped with the redesign of the practicals and the models, and Siobhan, who taught the class, and then the whole HARC team for everything that they did, and the students as well, because they really bought into it at a time when it was really difficult for them. So thank you very much to those people.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. That's fantastic, Neil. And your whole project is amazing. I think, and I think you covered one of my questions would have been about transferability to other disciplines, but you covered it nicely as well. And I think your Monday communication is definitely an of the elements in it. So fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to ask, have people got questions? It's a good opportunity to or ask questions, observations, or even just anything that might resonate from what you've been doing during COVID. Nathan?
Yeah, I suppose I should have asked Neil, being in the same department, but obviously engagement, fantastic job. But student engagement and student progression are not always directly linked. You can get really engaging practicals that don't fulfill the outcomes. So Neil, I know you now got the results. Have they performed just as well as other years, or has there been a slight loss in terms of their performance? How's that gone?
Well, it's a little bit tricky to compare directly between years because, of course, the assessment has changed, but better. So
Right.
the average is in keeping with what you'd expect, but it's the average for the module, the average scores is higher than in previous years. I've been teaching the module for this is that was my third year running it, and it's the highest average that I've had, and also the fewest number of fails in any of the assignments. And so the spotter in particular, which is run in a slightly different format. To
Hi,
norm.
Neil, I was actually going to ask you, for those not in the discipline, who is a spotter, or what?
So ordinarily, what we would do is, so spotter or spot test, you have a room full of individual stations, and you have 1 minute at each station. Then you ring a bell, and the students rotate around, and so it's predominantly identifying things on a specimen. So it's testing the practical knowledge, so the things that they will have seen as they've dissected and have gone along. It wasn't possible to do that because we were, at the time when the assessment happened, we were all kind of, the students were at home. So we did it over Zoom, and we had a very similar setup, but with pictures of cadavers. But yeah, the performance from the students was great. I was blown away by how good the videos were, and how inventive they were, how much they put into it. It was really nice to see that. And yeah, I think that they seem to have better knowledge this year, which is almost concerning because I'm returning to dissection. So
Yeah, I think Jeremy, could you stop sharing, please? It's because then we can see each other as well. Jeremy has a question.
I'm sorry, am I still sharing my screen?
Do you mean me? Who's sharing? Have I accidentally clicked share? I don't know. Sorry if I have.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I put in the chat, I did see a tweet, I think it was from one of your students, showing off the anatomy box that they received. I thought it was fantastic. And I just give a comment before my question. I remember you saying at the beginning that you basically just changed everything. And that really resonates with my experience in law. The most successful hybrid active learning, or what turned out to be purely online learning, the most successful examples were those where the staff changed everything. And regrettably, I think a lot of colleagues haven't gone that far, and they've tried to just shift what they used to do into virtual learning environment by just reproducing lectures in a new format, and that hasn't been as well received. I got similar comments from my students because I completely redid my course. But my question for you was, when I saw your tweet and I saw all the students receiving their anatomy boxes, I thought, oh, can we do that in law? That would be fantastic. We've got 450 students in first year. And so the thought that occurred to me was, how challenging were the logistics of producing and sending out those things to students at their home addresses? How did you do it? It sounds like a monumental task.
It is. It depends. There's different. Obviously, you can do different levels of it. So I have seen other people do it elsewhere. I saw Strathclyde Engineering did something very similar, where they had a backpack and they filled it with things for students to do basic experiments at home. So one or two other people have done similar things. Depends on how much you want to put into it. So there was, in total, that there was 9 or 10 models. We could have done less. One of the things that the students said was, actually, as much as they loved it, you can have too much of a good thing. And there were times at the in the semester where they struggled to actually find the time to make it because of all the other stuff they had to do. So if I was going to do that again, I think I might actually pare it back a little bit and maybe incorporate some of those into practical teaching and have less stuff to do independently. But that's different. So it's expensive, first of all. Even only having 35, 40 students still costs a lot of money if you work out the cost. The postage would have been very expensive. We were lucky in that I was able to give them out in person. So we had them in Hark. And there was a few students who were isolating in that first week, and friends picked them up and dropped them off. So we didn't actually, but we did have plans of what we would do if we had to courier them or if we had to go around and drop them off at someone's door or something. And yeah, that would become really expensive. But thank you very much to Nathan for agreeing to pay for it, though. So, and hope I was going to say yes. So the logistics of putting them all together was also difficult. But so while we borrowed some inspiration from things that have been done elsewhere. So, for example, one of the models is we made a lumbar plexus, a nerve plexus out of pipe cleaners. People have done similar things with different plexuses in the body, but I've not seen a lumbar one before. So we took inspiration from that, but most of them were brand new. So that we did, there was the time involved in actually coming up with the idea to invent a model and then writing the detailed instruction guide and then making them ourselves and taking photographs to put in and things like that. So that took a lot of time. So that was Steph and Amy helped me a lot with that. And then the packing, we had the technical staff in the department were really generous with their time on that. I have no idea how many total man hours it took to produce the box, but it was a lot.
This was semester 1, wasn't it? Is
Yeah.
that right? And so how far ahead of beginning of term start did you have to start working on all of this?
I started working on it in July because one of the things we were cautious about was being able to have things delivered in time. We had to source, however many 100 bits of purple tissue paper or whatever it was, and make sure they were all delivered in time to be able to pack them. So it was tricky, but I've got. If you're interested in doing something like that, I'd be happy to talk about it. And I've got records of how we kind of organised the assembly of it and everything. The thing that you said as well, which is not necessarily part of the question about changing everything, I think that's right. I think that trying to modify the existing modules to go for hybrid teaching will work for some places, maybe more things that are more theory based, but I considered different options, but it was clear that like anything that we did would require a huge amount of work, and only going half the way would still be a huge effort, but just not be successful. But I'm privileged enough that I actually had the time to be able to do it, and I know a lot of other people obviously just don't. So do recognize that.
I think Jeremy's just working out. It's July now.
Yeah.
And it does sound a team effort, but yeah, it was a brilliant. I think I remember from Twitter as well and hearing the students' feedback. So then, thank you, Neil and team.